Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with R-CALF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, we're hearing almost daily reports that the largest cattle feedlot companies are full of cattle and expanding, while mid-sized to small feedlots are empty, growing nothing but weeds. So what's up with this? Now, we've tracked U.S. Department of Agriculture or USDA data for years that report monthly returns to cattle feeding in the United States. These reports calculate feeder cattle prices, feed costs, labor, and other costs, and use USDA fed cattle prices reported by the packers to determine profit and loss. These data show that the average monthly return to feeding cattle in the United States was a negative $25 per head per month for the past 2 decades. And yes, you heard that right, a negative $25 per head per month for 20 years. Well, that explains why we've lost 75% of our smaller cattle feedlots in less than 3 decades. But it doesn't explain why the largest of cattle feedlot companies remain full and continue to expand. So then we're hearing stories of how some of these largest feedlots are receiving sweetheart deals, that they are either getting far more for their cattle than what is being reported under the Livestock Mandatory Reporting Act, or that the packers are covering some or all of the feedlot's costs. Now, recently we saw the contract that Easterday Ranches Incorporated had with Tyson. In that contract, Tyson reimbursed Easterday, one of the nation's largest cattle feeding companies, for the cost of the cattle and the cost of the feed. So that's how some large feedlots are going gangbuster, while feedlots that rely on the actual market are going broke. We've also heard stories that some of the largest feedlots are receiving payments from the packers above and beyond what the packer reports to USDA. Some of these stories include an end-of-the-year per head bonus for all cattle delivered during the year to the packer, and other stories describe a per-pound bonus paid at the end of the month or some other period. So to find out if these stories may be true, we contacted USDA to find out if such a per-head or per-pound bonus paid after the cattle were slaughtered, meaning after the fact, would still be reported to USDA under livestock mandatory reporting. Here's USDA's response. Currently, there is no mechanism or authority in livestock mandatory reporting to capture that information after the fact. So now we know it is in fact possible that some of the largest feedlot companies are receiving sweetheart deals for the cattle they sell to the packers that would not be reflected in USDA's reported cattle prices. This means it is plausible that the largest packers are providing the largest feedlots with deals that no one else is receiving. And this is a possible explanation for why the largest of feedlots keep growing while others are falling by the wayside, leaving cow-calf producers and backgrounders with fewer and fewer marketing options. So this brings us to the announcement made by USDA this week. The USDA issued a frequently asked question document explaining what the new administration intends to do regarding the rule issued by former Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue that essentially carved out several safe harbors that packers could use as a defense if someone were to allege that they were giving some feedlots preferential contracts while depriving all others. Now, the new administration is saying it will not interpret the Sonny Perdue rule to provide the packers with safe harbors. Instead, it's saying it will consider additional criteria as well as the specific facts of each case to determine whether an undue or unreasonable preference or advantage was given by a packer in violation of the Packers and Stockyards Act. Now, this is good news. You simply cannot have a competitive marketplace where some cattle feeders are fighting to remain viable in the actual marketplace, where all they will receive for their cattle is the price reported to USDA, while others are effectively insulated from the competitive forces in the marketplace by receiving additional unreported compensation for their cattle. So imagine how disadvantaged a small to medium feedlot is when they buy feeder cattle knowing the best they can do is receive whatever prices are later reporting to USDA, when the feedlot company he or she is bidding against for the feeder cattle knows that it will receive far more for its cattle or get its expenses covered when the cattle are ready for harvest. It's time for independent cattle producers to take their market back, and it looks like this administration understands that this must be done. And that's why we're working closely with USDA to get this done as quickly as possible. So please go to our website at r-calfusa.com to become a member so we can help you take your market back. Thank you and have a productive week.